46. And, let's see, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for being here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first thing we're going to ask for is an approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda to add a closed session?
So moved.
Barb, do we have a second?
Support.
Okay, Nick, is there any discussion about that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any motion?
Just for clarification, we asked for to add a closed session to the agenda at the end of the evening to discuss, property. So that was the motion second.
Okay, do we have any visitors that want to speak?
No one today.
Okay, so no, very good. Okay, then we're gonna go to the budget hearing, and Pat, I'm gonna turn that over to you.
Thank you. So, there, page 2 is a summary agenda of the individual pages we need to cover. There are 2 general fund budgets we need to take action on. Well, I need to recommend to Dr. Bannerjack that you take action. But there's 2 action items there in the general fund. The WCET fund, their building and site debt service, special revenue, student activity accounts, the special revenue community service fund, that's essentially community ed, our community ed program. We do have one fund, a small fund that handles the early childhood center food service program. And then the last bullet on there is the joint venture with Jennison. That's presented for memo purposes only. It's not something that our board needs to take any action on. And then another major topic, mandatory topic of the conversation tonight during the hearing are the tax rates for the general fund, building site fund, and the debt service fund. So I'll spend more time on the pages where there is more changes and notable items, and those that don't have any real changes or anything noteworthy, I won't spend much time on those. So if you could turn, and you're scrolling, to the first budget presented there is the revised budget for the general fund. And there'll be the third column over is gonna say original budget. That was the budget that we recommended at this very same meeting last year on June 23. The proposed revised budget closed out this operating year. And the items that we, by statute, have to talk about is the total revenues of $106,352,719. Total budgeted expenditures of $108,972,165. And the net loss, the net amount of expenditures over revenues are $2,625,607. The original budget, which we approved at a similar time last year, when it was the second year in a row, we did not have state approved budget. We're now in the third year in a row, not having a state approved budget, was a $5.8 million deficit. If you look above, just in highlights, we received more state revenue last year, mostly because there were things that weren't even an idea in June that became reality at the end of the year. The intermediate line above is mostly increased due to the funding formula for Act 18 distribution. And below, you'll see the basic instruction line The biggest reason that's up over the original budget, there's a $1.2 million increase, is, we had a bunch of programs and positions that were COVID funded, and as we were revising those, we had all the positions in the budget, we didn't have them in the right according to the state categories. So you'll see lines below that decrease, so that answers that. Any questions before I go on with the general fund revised budget for this year? Okay, we can come back to it if any come up later on. If you can scroll to the next page. The original budget recommended for 2026, 2027 is total revenues of $303,976. Total expenditures of $113,675,734 for an amount of expenses over revenues of $8.3 million. And that is going, the plan is for that to be a spend down of fund balance. We do believe that we have several amounts in this budget because it's gotta be an appropriation. This is the maximum we could spend. Before coming back to the board, we believe there are items in there, for instance, utilities, classroom supplies, that historically don't all get spent. And we don't always know if there's gonna be a hurricane where there's penalty rates paid for electricity. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's budgeted for. So, we do believe that the actual performance will be far better than $8.2 million. But that's the top line, things worth note.
A bold prediction for someone who won't read it.
It takes a lot of courage. Good point. Takes a lot of courage.
Well, set the bar high.
That's right.
Any specific questions with any of the line items on either the original budget or the proposed revised budget?
On the proposed budget, it looks like there's a 16% increase in transportation services. Can you
Yes.
Expand on that a little bit?
So, between the way the math works here on this report is we're looking at proposed revised to proposed original.
Right.
So, we add back in the bus purchases,
Okay.
and then we've got all the gallons, we add back in like a $5.75 diesel fuel, for fuel charge. So it's, that's what it is. It's restoring, like I said before, it's an appropriation. We don't believe our actual performance will be far closer to $5 million. Yeah.
Go back to the previous year, you can see the difference in how that drop is.
What's going on, Pat, with that the federal dollars between 26 and 27? That 15 and that 13, and minus
So,
13 was kind of.
the biggest single drop is that Filter First grant from a couple years ago. We got it a couple years ago. It was appropriated back in 4 or 5. We carried it forward into 5-6, spent it in 5-6, so it was $245,000 drop. And then we don't have, like, right now, Ken, we don't, all the formula grants, basically every grant we have, all the Department of Ed has released to us, it's about, well, the highest one is 95%, but we don't have those all. They just didn't say carry over the federal grants at the current funding level. They've only allowed release to us between 90 and 95% of last year's allocation. So those are down to.
Well, I understand, because you're, that 13, and minus 13 is like revised
It's revised.
26, No, you're doing that to 25. Never mind, I got it.
Yep.
I got it.
The biggest single
Got
one
it.
is that filter
Yep,
first,
yep.
that was from really 2 years ago, carried into this
Thank
year.
you.
Good question. Good question.
Cap, under community services and others, why is there a significant decrease in payments to not-for-profits and others? It's a significant decrease.
Isn't it received too?
Yeah, our titles on here are, we've got $115,000 in here dollars that really are for students to attend, private colleges. And because the private colleges aren't on the state's payment system, those private colleges it could be mostly teachers in our district. When they attend those private colleges, we get paid and then we send money for their tuition over there. It was $115,000 swing. And it could happen again next year, just that we don't have assurance that in the budgets, that's gonna be carried forward.
Thank you.
Good question. Anything else?
So we're all comfortable with, we talked about the, fund balance, and we're comfortable with that one. I think the other ones we kind of thought were a little high,
As far as
as far as the percentage of the overall budget that we carry
Yeah,
over.
this, we plan to spend it down. I mean, we
Right.
weren't banking it to bank it, so we plan to spend on fund balance, so yes. If I was forecasting versus, budgeting, I would forecast that number to end at a higher percentage
Okay.
than it's on this budget.
And all these numbers here have the new contractual numbers in there.
All makes sense to me. I appreciate how close you came on the revised versus the proposed. It's very impressive for this year.
We have a great team.
Yeah, no, I know you'd say that, and yeah, no, that's just pass it along. That's pretty darn good to be that close to what
They
you
did.
projected.
They did great work, thanks. Thank you for the compliment, appreciate it. Anything else in the general fund between the 2 years? Okay, if you could scroll to the next page, thanks to Mrs. Armstrong's strong work through the year, she was able to, close out, WCET. And so you see that, that fund is closed. And we will not have a, 26-27 fund for WCET because the program was dissolved.
So it's not done.
Done.
It's not done.
We had our last-
No rumblings about it.
No, Granville City Council was really excited about how everything went, so was, Hudsonville City Council, and then Granville Schools was there too.
You find a storage place for all of the archived
We have
materials.
not, they're still sitting in there, and Callie is like, where can I put these? So, I told Scott over at Granville, I'm sending a truck over, there they go.
Drop it off at the back door.
Yeah, Tyler actually from the city of Hudsonville was like, can I come over and just see like what would be good for us to grab? And I was like, I don't think you realize what it is, so sure, come on over and take a look.
So if he looks at it, he's gotta take it.
Yeah, exactly. If you touch it, you buy it.
So if you could go on to scroll to the next page, the building and site sinking fund. Highlights of that fund, if you look in the 4-5 actual column, you see an $821,000 revenue. That's the JHUD, the Jenison Hudsonville food service fund reimbursing Hudsonville for the work they could reimburse for on the central kitchen. There's some of the things over there.
The roof or something?
Yes, exactly. The roof wasn't eligible, for that, but in that difference, most of the difference in the $1,057,000 and the $821,000 up there was the roof. Couple other miscellaneous things. Nothing, super exciting in 5.6. In 6.7, that, $4.3 million is like, again, appropriation. And that's if a boiler goes out, if a roof goes out. And then, there's an allowance there if there would be any, properties or anything the board wanted to do that way. You just, at least the funds are appropriated. Not to say action's gotta be taken, but the funds are appropriated.
Is there, how do I say this? For the expenditures, will be budget for land site acquisition versus site improvement repair versus building construction renovations? I can see how there could be some, is there any flexibility in those numbers and those definitions to allow us for?
So if there was.
Allows for what?
Allow us to, let's just say, site improvement and repair. Let's just say we have two schools where we have a bad storm and we need to fix multiple roofs instead
The
of.
bottom line is the number at the very bottom of the page that you're projected.
Yeah,
That's your check.
okay.
How
So
you
we
spend it is up to how it was limited based on law regarding what was passed by the voters with sinking fund.
Okay,
If land acquisition is not that number,
yeah,
but site improvement is 10 times that number.
yes,
You can still afford it.
good, okay, so we have that flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted.
No, that's perfect, yeah, that's perfect.
If I recall too on that one, did we talk about, like, if we don't end up, if we modify the bond, we got some fields that are maybe in pretty rough shape, it could come out of here if we needed to like repair fields, okay.
There's certain things you can and can't do with sinking fund, there's certain things that when we pass the sinking fund language, which we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, there were certain things we couldn't do with sinking fund, but if there are things that we can do, number one, the first thing that we do is try to utilize the bond, if the language falls. Second would be this, anything we can before we get to the operational, budget, which impacts more directly on the classroom.
Thanks.
Anything else on sinking fund? Okay, you scroll to the, debt service fund, next fund. Really, not a lot notable in there, other than, we're at a point where there's, we were very close to being in repayment mode this May, and that's typically when the repayment would happen. We could refund up to $1 million, repay up to $1 million of our school loan balance, in the next fiscal year. It's a possibility, and chances are, as, Mr. Chansky said, beyond my not being here at Hudsonville, the PFM will recommend a refunder of the 2017 bonds, because that's the first year those bonds can be refunded. So chances are they'll recommend some kind of a refunding in the spring, so that won't happen, but if the refunding doesn't happen, that's how much we could repay the school bond loan fund. If you scroll to the next page, this fund, the student activity, accounts in the special revenue fund, these are literally student accounts. And we were required by GASB a couple years ago to put a budget together for those. That's what that is, just required by GASB fund. Scroll to the next page, community ed fund, I don't have anything to note on there. On the page after that, the food service fund at the early childhood center. Dr. Vanderjack and I worked with, basically JHUD this year to get them to take over operation of the food service program there. Something we've been talking about doing for years. It's a lot. We have to do all the paperwork, do all the compliance, and they've been helping anyways, so as you can see, in 26, 27, there's no activity in that fund except for the carry forward of the fund balance. That fund balance is very, difficult to spend. We'll probably need to get a letter from the state telling us how we can, buy some equipment, do something. So that is what is reflected there.
Real quick on that, are there any financial, like, indirect effects of them taking over operations for us?
So, in terms of another indirect, we get paid from both Jenison Public and
Yep.
Jenison, and Hudsonville Public
Yes.
receive an indirect cost payment is allowable to JHUD.
So no, we're not gonna get that anymore?
Well, we will still get it because we're still operating all the
Sure.
program in the schools.
Okay.
It was about 260,000 this year
Okay.
that we received in indirect. Was the max allowable we could get. Jenison got a similar amount. But, yeah, this fund is just it's so much more hassle than it's worth. And it's just flows right in with JHUD's purpose, so that's why we asked them to take it over, and they did.
Makes sense.
I say they did, we did. They did, we did.
Yeah.
'Cause we're on that board, so. The next two pages is just, as I said earlier, just the memo budget for the JHUD department. Let me know if you have any questions on that. And then flipping a couple pages more is this is the truth and taxation part of the hearing. When it's required by statute that we publicly state the rates, for each of our local funding sources that we ask the local units to levy. So we ask, local units to levy 18 mills on all, non-homestead properties. Those are second homes and businesses primarily. We ask for, 0.9625 mills to all property. That's for the sinking fund, and then 7 mills specifically for, the debt fund, and that is, again, on all property. That concludes the, speaking points for the meeting. Are there any questions?
Hey, Pat, back on the 27, I should have asked you this, but I just think it was something else. Foundation grant, what did you use?
$250 increase.
250 increase?
Yeah, it was
Which takes us at 10.
10.3.
10.
Yeah.
Did you do anything radically different with capital? Based on what the state's talking about, not talking about?
I didn't put the weighted average piece in there.
Okay.
Because there was just too much. We've got a matrix that our, funding person from the ISD, Misty Gallant, puts together for us.
Okay.
And if two people, if two House, Senate, or Governor were in agreement on it, I gave it some weight. And if three were in agreement, I put it in.
Okay.
But, that doesn't have enough concurrence yet, the new weighted average formula.
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And 250 is, well, we'll see. Okay.
Moving faster than you think right now, anyway, too, so
Yeah.
it's some optimism.
Father's Day must have motivated him. Yeah, I got busy over the weekend.
We're about to take a month off,
So, but yes, Ken, total would be, 10,300. Other questions? Well, if there are any other questions, I'd just like to thank a few people. The entire Hudsonville staff. There really is nobody excluded from that. They do a great job spending, just being good financial stewards, being attentive to compliance in particular. Nobody here wants to do anything wrong, which is great. It's, and then just, I'd like to say special thanks to Cody Martini and Stacy Johnson in the business office. They're fantastic, and, we just, I feel like the relationship we have on cabinet, we just get a lot of things done in a minute, in the I have enjoyed in other districts, so it's been a good year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board for that? Okay,
Can I ask
that
a
was-
question, Mr. Chansky? Do we need to do a public comment for the budget hearings?
Well, just in case, would I like to address the board regarding the budget? You guys aren't included.
Not prepared. Usually my husband's like, tomorrow we're gonna talk budget.
At this point, we'll close the public comment regarding the hearing.
Okay. So then we're gonna go to the consent agenda. Do we have, thank you very much, Pat. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Support.
Okay. See, do we have any discussion on those? That was Joy and Nick, not Joy and Andrew. Do we have any discussion on those? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we'll go back to the regular, action items, and we're talking about the 2025-2026 budget revisions that were just, presented to us. Do we have a motion to approve the 2025-2026 budget revisions as presented by Patrick Briggs?
I'll move that.
Support.
Ken and Andrew, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we have the 2026-2027 original budget. Do we have a motion to approve the 2026-2027 budget as presented by Patrick Briggs?
So moved.
Barb? Ken? Second. Any discussion?
Excuse me. We should note that the original budget includes the tax rates. You have to have those, so just note that they're included. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, next we are going to get into the discussion items, and I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Vanderjack. Amy's not here with us, so.
I will let you know that, we had this all set up and then it shut down middle of the presentation, so now we're on that screen, but I'll have to figure that out in a minute. But I'm gonna turn over to our ELA department. Laura's gonna take it, and kind of lead us through, the work that's been going on for about a year and a half now to be ready for the, what's upon us. We have until, really till the fall of 2027 before, we get into all the, what is required, but there's a lot of work that has to be done regarding training, materials. It is an extremely large ship to move, which you have heard regarding the Bridges curriculum with mathematics. Now we're in the same conversation with the ELA curriculum. So I want to thank not only the people leading this work, which are sitting to my right, but the staff that are actually picking up pieces and dealing with the curriculum in the classrooms and their engagement and involvement, which I know they're going to talk about tonight. So turn over to Laura to take it from there, and we'll answer questions as we go on. You want to put it on there?
I would love that, thanks.
Give it a shot. So.
Thank you so much for having us speak tonight. We're really excited to share our process with you. I'm Laura Buckett, in case you don't remember, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Mackenzie Stefanick, Principal at Park. I'm also the chair of the ELA committee, so I've had the privilege of sharing a little bit with you already.
You want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Stephanie Bullheis. I teach first grade at Jameson Lower, and I'm the grade level chair for first grade for our district. I'm Amy Mika. I teach kindergarten over at Park, and I'm also grade level chair for kindergarten.
I'm Charlotte Higgs. I teach fifth grade at 5-6. I'm also grade level chair, fifth grade ELA.
So there are some of the teachers who've been on the ELA committee, but also piloting this curriculum and doing the work alongside of us. So we thought it would be great to have them join us and help present some of the work that everyone has been doing.
To the board, I know you have this presentation on your computer so you can follow along. Since they don't, now you can look at that screen and see what you're supposed to be talking about. Hopefully you can read it from there. If not,
I have it right here too.
Laura has glasses you can borrow.
I tried to get Doug to put them on and he put it. Yeah, thank you. Do you mind going to the next slide?
Okay, so this slide, is talking about the timeline that, has been in motion since March of 2024. Laura and the curriculum office put together an ELA committee. It was, headed by Mackenzie and Nate Allen, and, we started digging in and taking a look at what are we doing here in Hudsonville to address the need of providing education specifically in ELA. So we really dove into the data. What are our kids showing us? Where are they excelling? What needs do we still have? We really dug into the standards, which was riveting, I tell you. It was like, but it was also very eye-opening. That was a big lift that took us, I believe, over the course of 2 different days that we met. We tackled all of the standards in ELA, which includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And then we looked at what are our current resources? What do we have in our classrooms available to teach our kids? And does that meet the need that was in place? So then looking at October of 2024, which was a few months later, the dyslexia legislation was passed. And we started having lots of conversations around that. We moved into April 2025 through this past November and really digging into that dyslexia legislation. We had someone come in and speak and present on that to try to get us up to speed and help us to understand what the state was laying out for us. And then we just have had a lot of conversations also around the science of reading and what are we doing in our classrooms day to day in response to that. Let's see. We talked about the research that was available to us, our best instructional practices that were in place, and then we established what do we believe here in Hudsonville, and are we responding to the needs of our students pre-K through 12. And let's see, what's the next one here? And we looked at the notion that the power of our students learning in the classroom really is driven by the skills and information that our teachers have. And that then propelled us into the following year, December and January of 2026. We started looking at the curriculum review that was provided by the state and what programs were out there. That was very exciting, but a lot to really look at and understand, and taking those little small snippets and deciding like where do we want to go in a classroom, like how does this play out. But it was very, very exciting for a lot of us. Many of us wanted to steal some of the stuff we saw, but we did not. So we all decided as an ELA department that we really wanted a comprehensive program. We wanted to respond to all of the needs that you see there, which was reading and vocabulary, writing and grammar, the very essential foundation skills, which includes phonics and handwriting, and then that important knowledge building, which is like background knowledge, and that is also big with vocabulary. And we knew then that we had 4 different programs to look at. We decided as a team that we were gonna move forward with 2 of those.
So can I just interject? So what prompted the review, what prompted action by this group, by this team, by the district was we didn't feel as a district tell me if this is fair or not, we didn't feel that we were meeting, we felt that we could do better as a district in terms of ELA instruction, commonality across the district. We were looking to level up. Is that fair? Kind of like we did in mathematics with Bridge?
Yeah, it is similar.
Yeah.
What we noticed in the data is that we were performing really well, particularly in the area of foundational skills, kindergarten through 5th grade. We noticed some discrepancies when it came to knowledge building and comprehension, but we felt pretty confident in what we were providing our students. But when the dyslexia legislation came out, what we also noted was what we were seeing in the research in the science of reading was not present in our current curriculum. And our current curriculum, because of that, didn't end up on the list that the state presented that we needed to be in compliance. And so while we were really proud of our performance and the data, and really the incredible work that our teachers do, including these 3 ladies right here, to make sure that when there were gaps in the instruction in our current curriculum, that they were filling them. These ladies are a perfect example of researching the science of reading and knowing what their students needed beyond the curriculum while still providing our guaranteed and viable curriculum. And so I think that's a big reason why we were performing really well, but ultimately the curriculum we're providing doesn't meet all of the needs of our students.
That helps, because thank you. Because you look at the MSTEP data, and you look at the data says that we do perform well with some gaps in some areas that I know we talked about. And so it was a combination of where we wanna shore up some of those areas and the dyslexia legislation that said, hey, let's look at what we're doing, and let's look what MDE is proposing, and let's head down the journey, head down the path. Okay, thank you.
So as Shar said, our committee spent almost 2 years really studying literacy research, taking a deep dive into our state standards, and then establishing our values and belief statement, which ultimately we're using that to be an anchor in our decision making moving forward. So everything comes back to that values and belief statement. So once that foundation was in place, we were ready to move into the pilot phase 1. So pilot phase 1 is when December 2025, the MDE released a list of curricular resources that were approved for districts to use, given in the dyslexia legislation. So when looking at that list, we decided to go with a comprehensive curriculum, so that led us to 4 different choices. So we used the EQUIP rubric, which is an objective rubric that we could use to look at all 4 of those programs. So each member of the committee filled out that rubric individually for all 4 of those curriculum options. And then we took our scores and put them together, and it was very clear that 2 curriculums rose to the top. So the 2 that we decided to move forward with were HMH into reading, as well as Amplify CKLA. And at that point, we invited other teachers to join us in the piloting process. So we have a committee of teachers who were excited and ready to jump in and teach this for small chunks of time to our students to see how students responded. But we felt like we needed more voices around the table. So we had representation from every grade level in the district, as well as every building had representation. So we had about a team of 40 teachers in kindergarten through 5th grade. Both of these curriculums have really rich, diverse texts, which is exciting. A lot of texts that we get to put in front of students. We're building knowledge with those texts. And so it's important to know also that all of those texts were vetted and reviewed by the Hudsonville book guideline process.
What was the reason why the committee felt necessary to add, or a bonus to add, the additional pilot teachers? What caused you to go in that direction?
I think we value the team approach. So for me, going back to my building, I would be teaching it in isolation, but I work really closely with my team. So I could invite my 1st grade teammates to join me, and then we could collaborate together. So I think for a lot of us, we didn't want to go into our buildings and teach it in isolation and kind of separate ourselves from our teammates. We wanted to invite them in to do it collectively, and then that also gave us more voices to make sure that we made a collective decision.
Was there any downside to that?
There's always opinions when it comes to
Mhm.
what
Right.
actually goes, so
Yeah.
I think the approach was a very solid approach to buy-in and working together.
Okay.
The downside is a lot of work.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
Right. You mean, okay, but they chose to be part of this. Okay.
Okay, this one's me. So this is the super exciting part where we actually got to put it in front of students. And so both of these blocks are actually the same thing. From end of February into March, we did the pilot for HMH into reading. Again, with all 40 of those teachers that said yes to giving it a try. I think it's important to note that there was a 3 to 6 week window when we really want to get to know a curriculum. We can't do it for just a little bit of time. And so, and when we think of ELA, it's a lot of our day. I would say a majority of our day. And so, teachers had an opportunity to teach anywhere between that 3 to 6 window. From conversations, it sounds like HMH lasted up really close to the 6 weeks, which was really exciting, especially coming back from winter break. It was a great time to just jump in. And so then we went back to that EQUIP rubric that Steph was talking about, where we got to first, like at a glance, give these curriculums a score, but now it was post-pilot. So now we have dove into the curriculum, looked at all of the online resources and things like that, and we got to fill those in again. That was from all 40 team members, which was really exciting, and then that whole process happened again. So one thing that was important to note is our training for HMH happened right in February, and then we went off and did it. And then in April, we had our Amplify CKLA training as well, and then we went off and did the for all 40 pilot teachers, we came back again together and used the post-pilot equipped rubric. So by then too, it was nice because we knew what the rubric said and we knew these two curriculums really, really well. So for us to kind of go through that and just give those scores, it felt very reassuring that we had two good curriculums to pick from.
Did all of the classrooms pilot the same curriculum at the same time across the district?
Within a 6-week window.
Okay.
Yep.
We needed to give a little flexibility because of M-STEP, fifth grade camp, there are things, and so as long as they did a minimum of 3 weeks.
And spring break was like
Spring
right.
break was in the middle of, that was right in between the two actually. So they
Oh,
did
that's
one
right.
leading
Okay,
up to
that
it and
was-
then they finished one after.
Trying to remember the feedback my 11-year-old gave me.
Oh.
Using this class, that's who piloted it, so anyway.
Nice.
Then it led us into May, so now we're looking at these post-pilot equipped rubrics, and we did a big feedback form from all teachers, which was a lot more like anecdotal noting and things like that. So it's really exciting when we look at those two scores. So from the equipped rubrics, I think one thing to note too is that when we compiled these rubrics, everybody filled one out, but the ELA committee members were the scores that they took. We needed to compare apples to apples from our work before the pilot teachers. All 40 were invited in from just the ELA committee members. But if you look up at the screen or on your computers, it says HMH into reading scored an 11.41 and Amplify CKLA scored 5.67. Knowing those two, both curriculums did hold a lot of things that we found in our values and beliefs, and one clearly scored significantly higher than the other. But when we look at the pilot teacher feedback form, and we all came together as an ELA committee, just lots of conversation came around it. So feedback around standards, research alignment, the comprehensive program, even student voice, which would be interesting, Mr. Dwight, what your child said too. Consistent high scores from H&H. Was really exciting to see when we looked across our rubrics, and all of our feedback is HMH had a lot of high scores a lot of the time. And Amplify CKLA had a wide range of scores, meaning some were significantly high and some were significantly not as high. And so I'll let Laura do this part because it's exciting. So the final recommendation.
It's actually gonna be Mackenzie.
Oh,
Can
great.
I ask
Yeah.
one thing though before you,
Yeah.
so, oh,
Oh,
big reveal.
We have it already. So.
Oh.
And we can read 11.41 and
Yeah, yeah.
That's my question, like, okay, so HMH, clear winner probably from a number standpoint, but if it was like 5.67 was the top number, is that high enough to like give it the go ahead? Or we've been like, not 12, that's pretty, it's like less than half, but we've gone back to the drawing board, or like what's the, what's the standard there?
Well, I'm glad we don't have to answer that because it wasn't our experience, but that's a really good question. We didn't only use the equip rubric. That was
Okay.
just one of our data points. So we used that and it was an important data point, and you can see there's a pretty big discrepancy between the two. But we also used our values and belief statements, and we highlighted with each of the curricula where we saw that within our values and beliefs, and that was created by the committee. And then we also used the feedback form, which included teacher voice, student voice, and it also highlighted the literacy, the essentials, the literacy essentials, and where that lived in each of the curriculum. So I'm not sure what our decision would have been if 5.67 was the highest one, but because it wasn't our only data point, we felt really
Okay,
confident.
it's one of the tools.
Yeah.
Usually the threshold is somewhere between 75 to 80% would be the expectation of the people in the room to have consensus on a decision moving forward. So that would have been fairly low. So it didn't work out that way, it worked out.
Yeah. Cool.
And it is important to note that we did have 100% consensus with HMH. Even with varying opinions and a team that was able to see the benefits, both of these were great curriculum materials. But the entire team, after looking at all of our data points, everybody voted HMH into reading.
So sorry, getting into the weeds here a little bit, but did every teacher who piloted the program vote, or just the committee?
Just the ELA committee.
That makes sense.
And part of the reason behind that was because the ELA committee had spent 2 years diving into the dyslexia legislation and the science of reading.
Yep.
And only the ELA committee looked at all of the data points. But I feel pretty confident that anyone who would have attended that meeting with us and looked at all of the data, because it was data from the entire pilot team, I still feel like we would have had consensus on which one.
Great.
As a teacher, I'm really thankful that Hudsonville follows the curriculum review process and they take the time to do a pilot for curriculums, because I would say that when I first looked at Amplify CKLA, I would have thought that that would have been my favorite program. And then putting it in front of kids, it's just really interesting to see how kids engage with the program and just facilitating it as a teacher. It's a completely different experience. So I know there's surrounding districts who have kind of decided, like, we're just gonna jump into this dyslexia legislation, we're gonna pick one and we're gonna go. And I think this process really proves that this curriculum review process is important, and getting a bunch of voices around the table is worth the investment, the time. So grateful to do that.
And Laura and her team led us through the process and really supported us, and it was, made a lot easier for us, to do the hard work day to day. They were in our rooms, they taught alongside us, our instructional coaches, they even taught for us so we could go see other people teaching. They really walked, hand in hand with us, and that, I think, all of us feel so thankful for that support and really feel good about this. Yeah, we're ready for fall, after the training, but then we're ready.
That's good to hear, because I can tell you over 20 years ago, the curriculum review process that you talk about has become much more robust. It was not this way 20 years ago. And it was more of a, let's just jump in and kind of react. So this, we saw the bridge, now we see it with DLA, and the rigor of the process, the adherence to the process, to really vet it out is very good, and your time commitment to do so, is very good, but it's really evolved a lot over the years, so thank you.
It's change, right? And change is not always easy.
Right.
And so getting feedback from all of you who are the ones doing it every day and engaging with our kids is super, super valuable. So thank you for the time you put into it. It's important.
Well, our next slide gives you just a brief little snippet of what HME teach reading.
We think.
It might.
Maybe not. We don't know if the sound's gonna work, we've lost our connection.
Welcome to HMH Reading, comprehensive K-5 literacy program building skills readers and writers, and content knowledge. Our approach is research-based, systematic, and guided by thought leaders like Dr. Ann Cunningham into reading co-author and scientific advisor to the Knowledge Matters campaign.
Interreading has structures built into it that promote deep discussion, deep experiences, such as writing, and even in grammar exercises that are building knowledge. And this is intentional. It's an intentional part of a knowledge building program, so that students aren't just passively reading a novel or an informational text. They're actually engaged with the text, but also with each other to understand some of these ideas.
HMH into Reading is more than a literacy program. It's a reminder to always keep learning and exploring, starting with topic-aligned text sets, including high-quality, award-winning titles.
Interreading has such high-quality texts, and that's intentional. They're trade books, they're award-winning books. There's an opportunity for children to be exposed to a variety of authors, genre, acquire knowledge about a concept or a topic. Think of weather. Weather's a good example. You might read a narrative in which a
reading provides a framework for doing this intentionally.
Best knowledge building programs are ones that are cross-curricular and they have systematically built in these knowledge networks into their curriculum. It's not like we used to have basal series or anthologies. It's very different. It's not random, it's systematic, it's thoughtful, and it's intentionally woven throughout the curriculum in a spiral. So for example, we might begin in first grade and deal with plants and genetics, but at a cursory level. But that introduces the concepts, the foundation to the child, and then that curriculum should be spiraling through so that by third grade, more conceptually complex elements are incorporated into this idea of genetics and plants and other illustrations of it.
Even before students are reading fluently, HMH into Reading supports knowledge building with vibrant and engaging big books and read-alouds aligned to module topics.
Big books and read aloud are the central component for building knowledge and into reading. An important part of this, and what happens is that children are read out loud to in text that provide rich vocabulary, new concepts and ideas. So even though you're learning how to decode and the foundations, you're simultaneously being exposed to ideas and concepts that will pay off later. I call it money in the bank, so that by the time you get to complex third grade text or fifth grade text, the new words aren't nonsense words, they're not concepts and ideas that they're not accustomed to. So all throughout and into reading, what we have is knowledge building in parallel and intertwined with decoding and foundation instruction.
As critical as reading is, students make discoveries by writing too. Beginning in kindergarten, HMH into Reading grows skilled writers step by step.
In many ways, we underestimated the power of teaching grammar and incorporating writing in a comprehensive core curriculum. Interreading has incorporated writing as an important part of knowledge building. And think about it. Why is writing an important part of knowledge building? Because you're having to pause and think. You're having to produce. It's much more difficult to produce, i.e. write, than it is to read. Writing is the other side of reading. It's the other side of the coin in terms of building knowledge. If I ask a student, read about weather, but then now write about it, you're using different parts of the brain. You're using different aspects of your understanding of a domain or a topic.
Prepare young readers and writers for their next big discovery with HMH into Reading's intentional knowledge building design.
That sealed it for me.
Okay, so, on behalf of our ELA committee and our, ELA pilot team, we would really like to recommend the adoption of HMH into Reading for all of our K through fifth grade teachers. We put a cost analysis up here. This is per student. We broke it down between the early adopters, which will be the teachers who will start it at the beginning of this next year, and really focus in on what do we need to know in order to implement this fully with all of our teachers, and then the remaining teachers' cost on there. And that cost is covering teacher materials, licensing, PD, but all the way up for 6 years. So they base it on the numbers that you have right now, and over the next 6 years, we won't have to purchase student books because they'll already be paid for based on those numbers. It's a vault. They basically have a vault, and you pull from it the amount of books that you need for each student. We also have, are expecting grant funds from 35M to cover about $230,000 of that.
35M, helping with that main goal.
It's the grant that you can choose from different buckets that are part of the literacy. It's what the state is using
The
as
state
funding
grant.
for, yeah.
Got it.
Mhm.
How,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, are you talking about financials? Mine's not financials.
Well, go one more real quick. So, it's probably a small percentage-wise, but licensing, what are they structured licensing now? Is it a one-time license fee or recovery like that as well? Or or is it a ongoing yearly license? It's
Just the
probably not a
current-
big
the current
financial,
curriculum
I'm
that
just
we
more
have?
curious.
The current curriculum that we have?
The HMH curriculum, do they require an annual licensing fee to use their curriculum?
It's
This
for
is
digital
one.
online materials.
Okay.
So the kids have access to books and reading and different resources, and you have the licensing for the next 6 years.
Okay, so every year, on an annual basis, you renew the license, or it's a one-time license fee for 6 years?
It's a one-time right now, and it covers it for 6 years.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
We own it forever. Just, that covers 6 years worth of updates. Basically support for 6 years.
Okay, thank you.
How are we gonna measure success of this program? Are we looking at M-STEP scores alone, are we getting feedback from teachers in classrooms? What does that look like?
I mean, there's a lot of ways that we measure success, right? There are a lot of different assessments that we use, and MSTEP is one of those. We have our STAR benchmarking assessment, we'll be doing screeners coming up. All of this supports that work that kids will be doing. And teacher feedback is part of that too, right? How are our teachers doing? Do they feel more supported than they did before?
Sounds like our scores are already really good. We've been doing a really good job, and that's great. So are we gonna look at areas that maybe we haven't been as solid in and see how that changes over time?
Yeah.
Or,
Well, I will say, you know, kind of when you look at bridges, the first initial feedback is, teacher feedback. How is the rollout going? How are they feeling comfortable with the curriculum in their classroom? And then as that rolls out, it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Now we wanna really look at benchmark data, whether it's, looking at STAR data, or we're looking at the MSTEP, to say, okay, where are we functioning? How do we compare to the past? The state can always change, what they do with their standardized testing too. I mean, those are also reevaluated every year. So I think initially it's the staff, and then it's continual staff feedback. And then you wanna make sure your kids are progressing the way you want them to progress. There's clearly so many variables when it comes to our student population also, and what does that look like?
sure.
So I think it's just a constant, and we do this throughout, you know, we get feedback from principals, that get feedback from teachers, or it's just a lot of constant evaluation that, to me, I think is the best way to evaluate if it's working. Are we gonna be able to go back in 2 years and say it's not working? What are we gonna do? I think it takes more time than that to figure out.
Sure.
And it's from progression. You have students that will be using this in first and second grade. What is it gonna look like when they're in fourth and fifth grade and transition to a fifth grade, 5-6 building versus not? And what's it look like going to middle school? There's just so many variables.
Yeah, and so, like, if we look back to some of our best teachers we've ever had, right? They weren't the best teachers we've ever had because of curriculum, right? So I really appreciate the fact that, going back to what I said before, that, like, we have involvement from great teachers who know what success looks like.
Yeah.
I think it's important for that feedback to kind of feed into how we progress going forward too.
For sure. And our ELA committee, you know, that's a continuous committee. It's not done once we have a curriculum in
Sure.
our hands, right? And so they're gonna continuously look at, how are we doing on our standards?
Yeah.
How is this looking? 3 years into a program, do our teachers have the support that they need? Do we have the resources that we need for students to be successful? So,
For sure.
So that's probably how many kids here that was talking about writing. I know there's been lots of conversation on this, cursive, and just because it's K through 5.
oh, it's coming back.
Is there any question, is this
There's
coming back?
cursive starting in second grade.
Okay, in this?
Yes.
Okay, is that a state guideline or just H?
It's part of this program.
Okay, good, music to my ears.
Yeah.
My third grader, I just got a Father's Day thing that my third grader did months ago or whatever, and there was like, stand in cursive, I was like, what?
The kids really were
He's
excited
great.
about it. They were like pumped.
They probably won't have to sign checks.
I know, but
Yeah.
still.
My kids can't sign checks. They
I just
didn't
think of all the
learn
legal
cursive.
documents you sign.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
What was the student response to the three of you that taught it? What did the kids think of HMH?
Well, in kindergarten, HMH has this really cool like race car theme.
Mm.
So we loved that. I think it's really interesting to think about, my students' feedback, because anytime you make a change in kindergarten, it disrupts a lot of our day. But they really did a really good job, and I think, one thing that was really good for me to see is when, HMH has really nice workbooks. And so when we handed these, out to students, it's like a whole year's worth, so they were like, what? Like, you're gonna expect me to do all this?
but as they got into it, there's really nice routines that, like, maybe the first time it was, right, it was wishy-washy for me, it was wishy-washy
Yeah,
for them,
absolutely.
but after we got into a routine, even in that 6 weeks, they felt like, okay, I opened my book and I know what this page is expecting me to do, so that felt really good to me, just in a very short amount of time, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it grow, especially like Dr. Vanderjack said, like, right, like I'm at the beginning, and so it'd be really cool to talk to Shar in 5 years and see what it looks like there. So kids loved it.
And in Upper L, the kids loved that they could write in what was the big book that they had. So they could, highlight, annotate, take notes, sit, you know, shoulder to shoulder with a partner and compare. They loved that they could really dive into those books and mark them up in whatever way they needed. And sometimes different stories had different expectations for, the work that needed to be done, but literally they were writing on every single page in that book that had their story. I wish I would have brought one, they're in the 5th grade, they're a beast, they barely fit in our desk, which we probably have to talk about, I should have mentioned that.
She's the furniture by next.
But that was probably their favorite part in 5th grade, was that they could really mark those up and, show their thinking in that book alongside the text.
How many, districts around us are using HMH? Do we know, do we care?
I mean, Allendale's using it right now and updating to the new version. Jenison is adopting it, because of dyslexia legislation. Hamilton is as well. Holland uses it.
Does that give us any, I mean, do we have any interaction with them about how they're using it? Could we pick up anything from them or vice versa?
I mean, I've been in conversation with a lot of their curriculum directors and excited about what that might mean moving forward. Like, how do we do some learning alongside of each other? How do we visit each other's classrooms and, like, really have a camaraderie and partnership with them, so.
How big of a deal is it for teachers that may come into our district who aren't familiar with this, as opposed to those who are already partaking in it somewhere else?
Yeah,
I can speak to
I
that.
was gonna say, I want the teachers to speak to that.
You know, with our existing curriculum, and the lower L teachers might need to have some input with this as well. With our existing curriculum, we knew in response to the science of reading that there were holes, there were things we were missing. And good teachers started picking up those pieces and started juggling. And I mean juggling, you're talking about morphology, vocabulary, word work. We just didn't have those in structured components in the program that we have been using really almost for 2 decades. And so when you had a new teacher come in, I've mentored teachers because I've been around for a long time. That's why my voice is all crackly. I was listening to the beautiful young voice. I'm like, but when you work alongside these new teachers, it's very hard to like try to hand this off when you're like, well, I picked this piece up from this resource and this resource from over here, and I went to a presentation and I used this, and now you're beg, borrowing, stealing from other people. It doesn't feel super professional, and it really makes it difficult to align yourself and share with each other, because once one person does it, the next wonderful teacher, they're gonna go find what works for them, and they're going to be picking up different pieces, and now we're juggling all different things, but it makes it very difficult to really sit down and have those meaningful conversations to share ideas and what she's good at, what I might be good at, and so forth, to make what happens in our classroom better day in and day out. And so having a comprehensive program like this, a brand new teacher can pull a chair up next to me and we're gonna walk through that, and it's gonna look pretty much similar. Exactly what I do in my classroom is pretty similar to what they're gonna be doing in their classroom. And then for our job coaches to come in, or our curriculum office to come in, it's probably going to be a breath of fresh air in supporting us to do the day-to-day work.
I think Andrew might have made some reference to this earlier, but so the grade teachers, no matter what we give them, they're gonna do it. Maybe those who aren't quite as motivated, from what I mean, this is gonna be a bigger help to them. Okay.
Well, and it's a great tool for new teachers who are just starting in their craft and their experiences. They don't have the years of experience and the conferences and the conversation with their colleagues to use in in their instruction, they just have a curriculum, and this is a resource that encompasses everything that they need.
And that
It
happened
drives
for me
us-
this year during the pilot. I had a student teacher,
Mhm.
right, so like Miranda's still in school. And she got to walk through HMH with me and, even as like more, I wanna say a seasoned teacher, okay? As a seasoned teacher, you know, I felt confident in handing a curriculum book over to her as well, right? And be like, okay, like you've watched me try this and this is kind of my take on it. What is yours? And she was able to walk right through it, right? It's very systematic in its approach that felt very good. And she would get hired and you hand her the book, right? It takes a lot of work, but I still felt confident giving her a tool that even though I had only dabbled in it, it still felt good to hand over.
And it drives consistency. I mean, we can have great teachers at Forest Grove and great teachers at Bauer, and they're great teachers, doesn't mean we're consistent across the district. And that's been an objective of the board over the years, is to drive that consistency. So all students are receiving a great education that we, want to have given here at Hudsonville. So it enables those newer teachers coming in, and it drives that consistency. So.
And that consistency will allow us to look at that data and look at where are we soaring, where are we just meeting the benchmark, and where do we really need to dig in and take a look at what we're doing and how students are responding to that. That consistency is gonna give us that opportunity. Right now, we're punching holes everywhere, trying to figure out.
One other thing we think about as we're doing curriculum in the elementary or any grade, but that handoff between elementary and middle school, and making sure that the middle school teachers and staff, they know what's coming at them from a curriculum standpoint, a student learning standpoint. Can you talk about that a little bit? How that interaction, how that information is being shared at the middle school, maybe the high school level, in terms of what we're doing at the elementary level?
Yeah, so, even when we looked at the curriculums to determine which ones we wanted to pilot, we invited our 6-8 teachers from the ELA committee in to do it as well, because all of these curriculums do go up through the middle school, so we wanted their feedback on how those pilot programs looked to them as well. And I know some 6th grade teachers, even this year while they were piloting, went down into Shar's room to see what that looked like. So I met with some 6th grade ELA teachers today, and they were talking about what they saw in there while we were doing some work with their curriculum. So there's potential for it down the road to be something that's consistent, vertically aligned.
And we feel good about the connection to 6-8,
Yeah.
that it'll flow.
Any other comments from the board members?
Nice work.
Yes, thanks for all
Very
that.
Yeah,
Well done.
I think one thing I'd like you to take back to the teachers is the fact that the board is very interested in what you're doing. Okay, this could have been a 5-minute conversation, and we could have said, see ya. But you can tell by the questions and by the comments that we do have an interest in this. This is very important to us. And we're glad that you take it so seriously, because we try to do that also. And so I'm very impressed by the presentation today. And also, for the rest of the board, Amy was gonna be part of this presentation also, and at the last minute, she wasn't able to be here. But you were able to pick it all up and do a very fine job with it. So, I'm very encouraged, not only by what I see on the board, but what I hear from you also. And thank you very, very much. We appreciate that.
We appreciate your curiosity too, and the questions. I'm so proud of our teachers and the work that they're doing, and I love that they wanna jump in and answer and talk about it. There's a lot of excitement around it, and we just wanna keep rolling with
Good.
that, so.
So at the next board meeting, we'll ask for the approval of the curriculum and some action items. A little bit of a tight turnaround, we won't meet again until later in July, which then we wanna get that moving. If I don't hear any strong opposition, we'll probably do a letter of commitment. We can get professional development scheduled, get materials, try to get them ordered, because it's a tight turnaround when we're only, no offense, we're only a couple of weeks away, maybe 10 days away from saying the kids come back next month.
No. That was so mean.
After that,
I know, right?
I was gonna invite you guys to stay, but after that, you can leave. Don't feel bad about me.
So if you have any,
That's true.
if you have any reservations, please let me know, so we want to get this moving. I know it's a it's not only an important process for our kids, our staff, we have some amazing teachers, we wanna make sure we have the support they need in schools like that.
I'm excited about it.
Well, thank you.
You're excited about cursive.
All right, see you in 2 months, how's that?
Yeah.
Much better.
Well, if they have that long, they can stay.
Thanks.
Okay, now we can get, the next, issue is board policy revisions.
So we have 3 policies that to bring before the board, as part of the work session. We will ask for approval at the next board meeting, to approve these 3 policies. This is the good news. The interesting news is that, after this meeting, the board policy committee will get a whole series of other policies that will go through the next meeting to approve in August, so we can have those ready for school, to go that route. These are 3 policies that we did want to get addressed that came to us prior to the update from our legal. So the first one is regarding cell phones. You can see it's very similar to the conversation we had. The policy committee, I want to thank Dawn and Joy and Nick for the work on the policy committee. We've spent quite a bit of time in this policy, going back and forth, getting this to a point where it's worded the way we feel accurately describes our expectations, that if we do have a technology to assist this, that we have one expectation. If we do not, we have another expectation. So both fit the mold of what the expectation is from the legislation regarding cell phones. So we're going to move forward with this recommendation. If there are any questions, I would read it, but it's all in red, the changes, and you can hopefully see if you have questions, be more than happy to address them. Okay. Next policy is regarding the credits. We did have some changes to some of the language, only because we wanted to update our graduation requirements. It is not a change in what the kids need to graduate. We wanted to clarify the number of credits, and there's been some changes with physics and chemistry concepts, as well as some of the English language, the ELA, and then the personal finance on the next page. So you see that's been updated. And then last but not least, you've heard us talk about the expectations of when it comes to students that have targeted intervention and what we want to do to support those students. We also want to put a little more emphasis on if you are assigned to be in a classroom based on the ability to make sure you can graduate with the skills that we would expect you to graduate with, i.e. you can read, then we want to make sure that we put a policy in place. So we put that, we kind of embedded the red language, if you will, into policy number 5411 regarding student promotion, retention, and placement. Basically, if you are assigned to a class, the expectation is that you are in that class. It's not an option. We need you to be in there because you've been identified as a student that may need additional support. We want to give you that support at the beginning towards, I would say, too late. Go from there. So that language, and again, thank the board policy committee for having these discussions. We spent a lot more time than the last 2 minutes. We spent a lot more time having discussions on these policies. Those are the recommendations that we bring to the board. Again, if you have questions that tonight, or if you, in the next couple weeks, you have questions, we do plan on bringing it to the board as we only do 1 first readings, unless there's major changes, but anything you have, please bring it prior to the next meeting so I can share it with the board. So if you have to have additional conversations, we can do it next meeting.
This last one, 5411, okay, so we want to put more of an emphasis on having kids in class. Practically speaking, what exactly do we expect?
So let me try to clarify this. If you are identified as a student that needs additional supports, and you are put into a classroom to get those supports, sometimes not all of our students feel that is the classroom they want to be in because it's not where the rest of their friends may be, or they feel like they've been identified to be in a room that they may not want to be in. And it turns into a parent request that says, I do not want my kid in there because of X, Y, and Z. And there's not a lot of, there's not a policy to make sure that we can say, sorry, you've been identified, you're in this classroom. So it really turned into almost a social issue that challenged some of the students. So if 14 kids were identified to be in a classroom, or maybe even 20, in which Mrs. Armstrong might look at and say, we can run a class with 20 kids, and then we end up with 4 because of parents that didn't want their kids in there, then it turns into, can we still run that class? When we know those 4 students wanted to be in there and needed to be in there, we had an additional maybe 10 to 15 that needed to be in there. We wanna make sure we can run that class and we can support those students.
So we're
What you're about to say is accurate. I don't know if you can say it, but yes,
I know what
sometimes
you're
it's a
saying.
social issue that we're trying to
Yeah.
fight through.
Right, okay.
Yep. You're 100% right.
Okay.
Didn't even need to say it, I knew exactly what you're gonna say.
If only I
That's
could-
why we asked.
If only
that's-
I could speak.
No, you're no, it's hard to say it too,
Yeah.
right? It's like, is this really the answer is yes. I
Okay.
mean, we still have students that, to some degree, we had the same thing with 3rd grade reading, right? 3rd grade reading, if you had one student that, according to the state of Michigan, said they were gonna be held back, there was always a waiver. And guess what? The waiver existed and went from there, so we're hoping to put a little bit more, we need to make these are important supports for these kids.
Okay, good.
I have a quick question, only because I'm a science geek. It looks like we no longer have anatomy and physiology.
Correct.
Can you share a little bit why that's why that's being removed from?
As a requirement?
Yeah, or no, it's not, it's, used to say there was a choice of the following, now it's no longer a choice.
I don't know.
I understand, because like chemistry A and B and physics A and B, conceptual, like that's covered under the red text, but.
Yeah, I don't think those classes exist anymore.
I'm saying that anatomy and phys doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore.
I don't know if they have enough kids to run it, I can find out.
I see, no, it's okay.
It probably exists on the course guide, but it's probably not,
Kayla took it.
Did
It's
she?
actually one
I
of the
don't-
harder classes in the school. It's a good class.
oh, I know why, because those are the classes that are required under the Michigan Merit Curriculum. The other one are not, they're electives that they can take, these are the required. So they still have to take those, even though the other ones are electives that they can, same with,
Astronomy.
astronomy and,
Yeah. So okay, got it. That makes
yeah,
sense.
it's not a required under Michigan Merit Curriculum.
Got it.
Sorry, I was just jumping from policy to policy.
You should know, word for word,
I know.
everything we're gonna throw at.
That makes tons of sense. Good, thank you.
Any other questions on policies? Thanks.
November election ballot,
Okay, here's a little bit of a, I'm gonna say heavier lift. I feel like I'm way down here at the end of the table. Like,
Yeah, come on, join us, Doug.
I should sit behind the screen right now. But I can't move, because I'm all plugged in down here, so I'm afraid to move.
You want me to move over to you?
Can you hear me? Yeah, can somebody sit by me? So, we have talked at length about a potential bond issue, this coming school year. We've talked about the timing of it, we looked at November, and now we're looking at, May election, could be in the future. It would be May of 27. In order to do that, we then think about when would our next, election be for our sinking fund and our non-homestead. It's hard to believe, but when we asked for our voters to approve the sinking fund, which was a 5-year request, and we asked the following year for a 4-year non-homestead with a 2 mil heavily override, that time is coming to an end. And that time technically expires, I'm gonna say this, if we were to vote again, we could wait until May of 2028. So it's still 2 years away. However, if you wait until May of 2028, the old operating and sinking fund will have already expired. And so it's the last chance to, and we've done it in the past because we did it every year in May. Now this is the last chance. So under advisement of legal counsel, sometimes it's okay to ask ahead of time to see how things go. And if they don't go well, then you have other chances. Also, if we ask for the non-homestead and the sinking fund in this coming year, it's technically still on the books for the following year, so we're asking our community for a renewal, which has always been a renewal, but you can't use that in the ballot language if it's expired. So if it expires after the summer collection of 27, any request after that is considered a new millage. when I think we would all look at it, and most of our community would look at it and say, what do you mean it's new? We've always asked for this. We've always had it on the books. So the language is to ask for a renewal if we do it, before it expires. So we could do it in May of 27, and then it would be a request for a renewal of what was already in the books. But as I just mentioned, we were looking at a potential bond issue in May of 27. So you could have all three ballot items if you only had one bond issue request, all three on the books in November of 27, which is an option. We would not be the first school to have done that, and it's been successful in some schools, and it's a lot in other schools. I don't know the answer to that question. But we could do it in May of 27. We could also do it in anytime we could, after that. We could do it in November of 27 as another option.
Or August.
I'm sorry, August of 27, but it's after the summer collection, therefore it's a new request. So the other option is to ask for it ahead of time, and to ask for it in November of 26. So Pat and I met with the finance committee and had this discussion about, here are some options. And the option to have it in November was one that was recommended by legal counsel and discussed with the finance committee to bring this to the full board about, should we bring both ballot items to our constituents in November of 27. The next,
26.
sorry, I'm getting my years wrong. The whiteboard's up in my room, which has it all written down. So November of 26. By going in November of 26, it is a gubernatorial, so the cost of running the election does not fall on the district. So it saves us roughly $50,000 by not having to run our own election. If we have a bond issue in May of 27, it looks like there could very well be a county-wide election also, which also reduces the cost for us to have to run an election on our own. So we're trying to be good stewards of the money also by saying if it can save us $50,000, I'll say plus, probably gonna be more than that, and do a November of 26 for the non-homestead and for the sinking fund, that would be the request. This is where it gets a little confusing about the numbers. When we did the non-homestead in the past, it was a 18 mils plus a 2 mil, what we considered a Headley override. So it gave us that buffer. So as it reduced, as Pat mentioned earlier in his hearing about the truth in taxation, about what is the rate is reduced, it does get reduced over time. So, however, with our, the 2 mils, we are well within the numbers to ask for a renewal of both the 18 mils as well as what's left of the 2 mils, which is about 1 point, it's on the sheet, 1.6, 1.6911. So that's what, so there's still plenty left of the 2 mils to carry another, in this case, it would be 4 years going from there. I'm sorry, 5 years with the Headley or. Because it's a renewal, and because of how it expires, we can bring them both on a 5-year cycle and still call a renewal based on, because if you remember, one was 5, one was 4, both be on 5. The challenge of the sinking fund would be a renewal, but the language would stay the same. In the language, we did not put school buses in the language because the law passed after the board had taken a resolution, put it on the ballot. Happened to several schools, you couldn't go back. So if we were to add school buses to the sinking fund language, it would be a new millage and not a renewal. However, we feel really good about where we are with our school bus purchases, that we've been intentional about really the last 8 years. And I think we're in a really good spot when it comes to buses. So I don't want that to overshadow the renewal component of both requests. And plenty of questions you may have, but we would plan to bring this to the board in July for a resolution, but both on this November and then communicate with our community accordingly, so that they're well aware of what's coming on the ballot.
When does the language have to go to the county?
August, or, is it August 11? It is August 11. It's right, I mean, we have plenty of time from the next meeting. Initially, there was some concern that we have to have tonight as a resolution. It is not, this is a conversation. The resolution will come at the July meeting. And that gives us time before the August, language to make sure it gets approved by them.
We've never been able to use city fund for school buses.
It's never been allowable.
This is just now allowable.
They
So we don't-
added to it, that's correct.
Got it. We've been fine.
That's correct.
From a psychological standpoint for voters, renewal sounds better than review.
The challenge along that is you're voting in 26 for something that goes into effect in 28.
I know.
So we gotta, that messaging we'll have to make sure, but I think they'll also appreciate the cost savings by asking for a renewal than waiting and then going, and it's, no matter if it passes or not, you're still paying the money to run it.
But it's also clarity. Then people get so confused going in there and seeing an increase, and this really is what it is. It's a renewal, and I think that this voter, I appreciate that. It's a renewal, we're already doing this.
Totally.
It's psychological, it's.
I think the one thing from a communication standpoint is, I mean, we've done enough surveys and there's enough people out in the community that know we were looking at doing a bond proposal, that there's reasons why we're holding back. I would hate for certain people to get confused with it.
We do
There's
have,
X% of people that are gonna be no.
we do have communication going out regarding that, but we have a meeting next week, Tuesday, to finalize that. But that communication needs to go out also. Oh, technically all three.
I also feel like the community appreciates us being so forward-looking. Like, there's a way to communicate that, like, yeah, this is for 2028, but we don't react, we plan, and there's a message there too.
Any other questions? All right, we'll probably do this resolution then in July.
Good idea.
Did Troon flag that for us? Did they bring that to us?
It's a great question. We were going rounds regarding the language and the timing and trying to get all of these in order along with a lot of the county requests. Because we know there's also between Parks and Rec, CTE, enhancement, special ed, all of these other components that are countywide, and then seeing how we could try to put them together. So Troon reached out to us because we had questions, and then we met a couple times going through to finalize this. The challenge was the confusion between 28, asking in 26 or 28, and then if you wait till 28, we always used to do that, right? It expired last year, let's ask again in May, because it was an annual thing. So this is really our second time to bat, to ask for something more than 1 year. And so that was the biggest.
Yeah, which totally makes sense. My question really was the Troon flag it. Were they proactive in their approach?
Yeah.
Or it just kind of came together.
I would say that's a fair assumption, that they did flag it, but we also had conversations, the two of us, prior to, going them, but yes, they reached out and said, just, you have these expiring off the books, and our definitions are a little bit different, because I look at, because we're a full summer tax collection, they look at the summer, the minute you collect it, it's done. We looked at it, the calendar year, it's done. So it's just working through some of those, and there's been some changeover with who we work with at Troon, which has been a welcome turnover also.
Well, and my question also is broader. It relates back to the policy discussions we had earlier. We shifted from NEOLA 6, 8, 10 months ago, whatever it was, and we're happy with Troon from the standpoint that they are proactive and bringing changes to us, suggesting changes and so forth relative to new legislation that's been, coming up like and so forth. We're happy with Truman and that change.
Yeah, I would say I think I am. There's still some things we're working through with policy, timing.
Okay.
You know, Robin and I had the policy update meeting last week, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, middle of last
We
week.
were so confused.
It was a blur, but last week, now we have worked with policy committee and get something going, but it's June, and it would've been nice to do this in April. Because now we're a little bit of a tight gun to get it through the board, and then change handbooks, get those for the kids, I mean, there's just, and I think that's new to them, so we're trying to, the cell phone policy was a big one, that we helped push that one faster, but they're fairly new to it, but more and more districts I've talked to have switched over to Trim.
So better, not what we wanted exactly, but better.
No, but a lot better, a lot better.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, substantial.
Thank you.
It's Michigan policy.
Yeah, it's Michigan.
Based on Michigan law.
Any other questions about the, election? Okay, how about a mundane subject, the trip request?
Cross country, wants to go to Indiana to run.
Is that on there?
Nope,
Oh.
nope, no chance. But yeah, so you see there, it's just out of state overnight, so it'll come to the board and consent agenda next meeting. Any questions about, cross country?
Okay, next we'll go to superintendent goals update.
Yeah, so, regardless of the evaluation here or not, we talked about goals in January, do a mid-year update. I don't know, I lost my projector, so I can't show you, but I think you have them, so we'll go from there. So I'll just go through these, in all honesty, pretty quick here. So goal one, bond development, we spent a lot of time talking about that. We're gonna do another quick update in a minute regarding the bond update. You know, clearly it was an idea that it was gonna be a goal through November. But I think as things have evolved, now this will go into next year. But definitely still doing a lot of work, that I'll update the board on in a few minutes regarding where we are with the bond.
Will you give us the, state approval and language approval milestone dates in your update?
Say that one more time.
State approval and language approval milestone dates.
Like the treasury meeting?
Maybe you're gonna cover that next,
For the bond,
for the bond.
yes.
Just,
We don't
I think
have
we
them yet.
have a
but we
sense
will.
of the time.
Yes, when the board needs to approve the language, and is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, so when the board needs to approve language, we have to have the state say, you're good.
Yeah, the PQF and stuff, get that done? Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah,
You
sorry.
can cover that next.
Yep.
Thank you.
Strategic planning, goal number 2, source 6, that's what we'll basically, we'll bring that to our administrative team at our retreat that they have coming up in August. And then the goals will be generated, then we'll bring the sample goals and we'll go through all that work similar to what we have in the past. I don't know, Joy's not been through it, I think the rest of you have all been through it. So they'll go through with our team, leading that work. We're still having discussions about, business and finance. Pat might help kick us off and transition us to a new person, because it's early August and, he's still around, so it might help just the continuity of that component, category of our strategic plan, and then we'll move on.
Last time we had focus groups, not the right word that you actually used, but we had a board representative on each of the different, somebody help me.
The subgroups.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we know when that might happen?
We're still trying to finalize that. It looks like it'll be the August 5 and 6, 4 and 5, something like that. You can
Somewhere
pull my
around
calendar up. I can do it right now.
That was awesome.
And I will get the dates out. It is August 4 and 5. 4 and 5 in the morning from 8 to 12, and the 2, I believe, I don't know if maybe it's both the agenda, but is that right? Both of them are the strategic planning?
8 to noon, 4 and 5, yeah.
On the 4th and 5th. So if you're available on the 4th and 5th,
We'll vote first and then,
yeah, we'll be done by noon though, so you have plenty of time to have it on the 4th, so. But we can get a calendar invite to the board too, and then we'll go. And then, last but not least, is the student achievement, continuous improvement. You heard a lot of that tonight when it comes to student achievement, continuous improvement. But we also have some updates on some of the metrics that we're gonna, share at our July meeting. We used to have a pretty good snapshot of where things are for the board, but we, with the help of, Mandy and Amy, they've really taken a whole deep dive into this. So we'd like to share some of that work with the board in July, so you can see kind of a lot of the work from the past, moving forward, numbers. A lot of them are great numbers, and then there's also numbers that we're like, all right, these are areas that we really gotta pay attention and focus on. So you'll see some of that information in our July meeting. So that's a quick update on where we're at. You clearly know there are other things going on in the district, so if there are other things that you would like to see, to get more on, please don't hesitate to reach out.
I like this format, super helpful, easy to read.
Thank you, Dr. Van Zyl.
Mr. James, I'm sorry, did we cover the trip request? I might have left it out.
Yes.
It's on there.
Yep. We ran right through it.
Oh, my.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
John.
I got nothing now, that was good, I don't know.
Okay, and then, you wanna make any comments on bond development?
If that's okay, I'd like to. So, we've met, we met as a team, we identified some of our key principles that we're trying to really focus on with the bond. The next step is we meet with our steering committee